Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Royal Talens Creators Studio Live. My name is Jeff Olson. I'm the Art Education Director for Royal Talens North America, and I'll be your host. Today, we have a very special guest, but before I introduce her, I need to remind everybody that today's giveaway is an awesome one. One general admission ticket to the 2025 Plein Air Convention and Expo, May 19th through the 23rd, right around the corner, happening in Reno, Lake Tahoe. And this is valued at $1,997. Incredible. And it's all complimentary thanks to Plein Air and Streamline Publishing. Super happy to be a sponsor again this year. Royal Talents will be there with our booth as always and helping to support the Plein Air community. We love it. This is our favorite event every year. A little bit about that event for those of you who are uncertain or never heard of it before. The Plein Air Convention really brings some of the foremost artists in their fields to share the best practices and techniques with participants for 5 days. Really high impact art instruction. It's your chance to be part of a family of artists. And when I say family, I mean it. It's such a fun community and really learn from some of the top painters, top landscape painters in the world. To be entered in this giveaway today, you need to put "I love pace" during the live broadcast in the comment section, and I'll announce the winner at the end of the show. So, back to our wonderful guest today. She is an American artist whose paintings are revered for their bold brushwork and sensitive portrayal of emotions that capture human experience. And you get to see some of these firsthand. They really are amazing. She studied at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California, and attended workshops with famous artists Jeremy Lipking, Morgan Weisling, and Richard Schmidt. And I hope I pronounced Morgan's last name right there. She is an acclaimed and much sought after instructor, giving workshops, demonstrations, lecturing internationally. Her artwork has received numerous awards and honors, too many to list here, including from the Portrait Society of America, the Art Renewal Center, and she was also included in the Royal Talents Ambassador exhibition at the Rijksmuseum, a fantastic event. And maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that today. Her artwork has been featured in international exhibitions and publications as well, including Fine Art Connoisseur, Art of the West, International Artist, American Art Collector, Southwest Art, and American Artist. Everybody join me in welcoming Michelle Dunaway. Michelle, how you doing?
Hi, Jeff. Sorry, I just took a drink of water and choked.
Of
So,
course, of
right at the
course.
wrong time.
It's how it always works out. It's Murphy's
Yes,
Law, right?
yes.
Oh, so glad to see you. So glad to have you on the show today.
Good to see you again.
This
Yeah, I
is
don't
really
think we've seen each
fantastic.
other since the Plein Air Convention a couple years ago.
You're right. You're
Yeah.
right. It was when we were in Colorado. That was a great event. It was a great time. It's always a wonderful event. So, I hope folks look it up, whether they're the winner or not, take a look at this great opportunity. And if you can't do it this year, do it in the near future. It's really a fun experience. So, where are you at today?
So I'm in my studio in New Mexico. I'm gonna have one more drink of tea just since I swallowed wrong.
You go for it. You go for it. Get
But
comfortable.
yeah, so I'm home painting for a little bit. I leave next week to be on faculty at the Portrait Society of America annual international conference.
That's
And
another fantastic event. Can you tell us a little more about the Portrait Society?
yeah, the Portrait Society is a wonderful annual conference. It's every year they have the international portrait competition. Thousands of entries, every year, and the finalists are there. And then there's professional artists on faculty teaching. I'll be giving a demo on the opening day on Friday. And this year it's in Washington, D.C. It kind of bounces around sometimes to different cities. And it's just a fabulous event. It's like 4 days just jam-packed with demos and lectures. And then there's just the camaraderie of, we're all staying in the same
Yeah.
hotel, so we hang out, we talk shop. It's really nice to meet with like-minded people that we're so solitary in our studios a lot of the
Yeah.
time. And so
Yeah.
to just kind of, meet with other artists and talk about, what we're learning, what we're struggling with, encourage each other, talk shop, so to speak, it's a really wonderful event. And it's geared just towards portraiture, which is really special too.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been a while since I've been to the event. I know it's really
Oh,
exclusive
you need to
and we always
come.
have, I know we need to come. We always have great ambassadors there like yourself. I think Susan Lyon's going to be there again this year. And yeah, a whole list of wonderful artists who are participating. Always a great event. Um, have you been, you said you were just traveling. Where was your most recent trip?
Well, my most recent trip, gosh, I have to think. I was in Texas photographing a model for a portrait just last week, just flew in for the day. And then recently I was in Taos meeting with a beautiful Navajo model that my friend Mark Majori organized. It's for some upcoming paintings that are going to be in the Far West show, which the Far West show is a group show put on by Mark Majori, really well-known Western artist, and his wife, Patricia LaFonhawk, who's also an amazing, um, designer. She designs clothing and jewelry and amazing artist as well. And so they're putting this on in Austin in September. So I'm working on some new pieces for that show. And before then, gosh, I can't remember. I travel so much.
It's all a blur. It's all a blur for
It's all a
sure.
happy blur. So
Well, you've been busy. That's great. I mean,
yeah. And
when
my
you
next
talk about,
upcoming trip is back to Africa, where I'm just actually not teaching this year. I'll be teaching another workshop there next year in the Serengeti, and which we're still working out the details. So check my website if you're interested in going and painting with me in Africa and learning some photography as well. I've got an amazing photographer who's a guide who we're, going to teach in conjunction. But in August, I'm just going to kind of for my birthday with friends and
uh,
learn some photography myself because you
a
can
special place to
never learn too
celebrate.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's fantastic. You talk about getting ready for exhibitions. About how many exhibitions do you participate in a year, do you think?
It varies, but I'd say anywhere between 4 to 6 or 7. And it varies to where it's like if I'm having a year where I'm having a solo exhibition and I need to, paint 15 to 20 paintings, then I might, bow out of some of the regular,
Right.
because I can't just can't take it on. But some of my regular galleries have annual exhibitions.
Hmm.
Like Insight Gallery has their annual fall show, and then there are invitational shows that I've been invited to that I really love and love the organizations behind them and museums behind them. So I always want to say yes to them
Yeah.
when I can. Like I'll be in the Small Works Great Wonder show where the Prix de West is held at the Oklahoma Museum of Western Heritage, and that's just a wonderful museum. And I always like to participate in that whenever I can. And
Yeah. Yeah. Is it always new work that you exhibit at these, or is it a,
yeah, I really try to, and I'm thankful my galleries sell most of my work pretty quickly. And so the things I paint for exhibitions, I try to always have new work. So
yeah,
for the Far West show, there's going to be some new, Western themed work, which I've done some Western themed in the past, but working with this beautiful model who is Navajo Dene, and she was teaching me about her culture. And, we spent several days together. And I always really
fantastic.
advocate to students, don't just get a photo and work from a photo. I always like to work from life when possible, but it's like really important to like go and spend time with the people you're going to paint, learn about their culture, learn about it's not just about aesthetics for me or outward appearances. It's just about really like honoring their culture and their way of life and trying to bring some education to that through art,
Yeah.
uh, to other people that may not know about it.
Well, that'll be wonderful. Actually, that relates to a question I had for us going forward, but maybe
Sure.
I'll do a couple others first, and we'll come back to it because I do have some
Okay.
questions about that for you.
You can jump around
So
however you want.
we'll
I
bounce
trust you.
around. Portraiture obviously has been central feature of your career. Do you remember what your early attraction was to it? Was there portrait paintings that you loved, or was it just the process of painting, or all of the above?
Well, I just was fascinated with faces, hands, expressions, micro expressions. I was very aware of those from like a very young age. I think before I was verbal. And my mom will tell you if she was here the story of like people coming over to the house to visit when I was, 6 months, a year, in my playpen there, and I would unnerve them because I'd be staring and studying their faces. And I just remember before I could actually talk at, 1.5, I started like tracing, with little pencils or crayons, any face or hand that I saw in a book or, And my very first memory as a human being at 2 years old is seeing an art book of Michelangelo, so.
Cool.
And in my mind, in my memory, the book was as big as this painting behind me. And in reality, it was like this big, probably. But I was like, oh, and I think it was, uh, photographs from the Sistine Chapel or something of figures. And I was just captivated.
I know it. Art books are so special. Uh,
Hmm.
and they are, when you're a kid, they're these giant, things that are living in your family library or wherever you're visiting, but they are such an inspiration. Still are an inspiration.
Oh, yeah, me too. And just, meeting new people. And that's one of the reasons I like to travel so much is just to meet the people even more than going to the place. I mean, I loved going to Africa and seeing, I love animals and, the landscape and everything. And I'm really kind of a naturalist at heart, but meeting the people and hearing their stories and talking with them and getting to know them, especially when you're at a camp for, a good week or two. And so you really get to know the same people every day. And it's just, I just want to paint everybody. Everybody, I don't have enough time, but everybody has, their life story that
Sure.
is told through their face, their expressions, those micro expressions, especially when they're talking about something that's meaningful to them. So that's just what I love to capture and paint
Yeah.
most of all.
Yeah. Well, how do you begin a portrait? I mean, you've kind of alluded to some of it now, but what's your process when you're getting started?
Gosh, I mean, it really depends whether it's a portrait in the studio, a portrait in natural light, a portrait on location, I mean, and even then, even in the studio, I might have like five different ways that I could start. So and I always tell my students that like in workshops and such, it's good to have different techniques and different ways of starting. So when you sit down and you're really inspired, you can like pick from your repertoire, so to speak, which would best serve this situation. Because sometimes it depends on lighting, if it's predominantly in shadow, predominantly in light, the amount of time you have to paint someone, if it's from life. I'd say a good basis that I would go by on a purely technical standpoint is to start transparent and move to opaque. If we're talking paint consistency, which is why I love like Rembrandt transparent paint. I mean, it's just they're so transparent and almost like a watercolor kind of, you know, where you can see through it. And I love laying in kind of the block in with those transparent colors and then moving into opacity. Um, it just, gives you more fluidity and freedom in the beginning.
No, that's great. I mean, your portraits are wonderful, and they always seem to capture something unique in
Thank
the
you.
subject. How do you get beyond just a simple likeness? I mean, is it a conscious, unconscious? Is there something that you're always, keeping in the back of your mind?
Yeah, it has to be very conscious. And I think when you start a portrait, even to piggyback on your last question, it needs to start with an intention of what you want to capture, what you want to say. And I think, we all learn going to art school and like being in front of the model constantly. We just want to paint a likeness, right? And we're trying to get it to look human and get it to look like the person and, learning techniques and kind of in a way just copying what we're seeing. And I think, the bridge between that and doing something that speaks to your experience, your personal revelation as an artist, and moves it into like a fine art capacity, um, or even more gallery work, so to speak, more resolve, is thinking about what is it that inspires me about what I'm seeing? What am I connecting to in the model that, a hint of a story that I see that connects to something of my life experience, and as human beings, no matter where we live or grew up or our unique life experience, we do have the connectivity of like emotive content of of our soul, so to speak, not to get too philosophical, but hey, why not? It's like that. I think it's very important to kind of think, why am I responding to this? What is moving me to paint this? And then to kind of keep that in mind and to imbue the painting with that. And sometimes that means emphasizing certain areas. Sometimes it also means like editing certain areas that don't draw attention away from your main central focus, in the painting. So
Wonderful.
knowing what you want to say is a huge
Yeah,
thing. I think you have to keep that in mind throughout
yeah,
because we don't want
content.
to just say like, oh, this nose and an eye lines up correctly. You know what I mean? That's
Mhm.
part of it. If you get that off, people will miss the deeper message. It's like I always compare art to music. You know, if you're playing a piano concerto, if you hit a wrong note, people are not going to get the emotive content of listening to the music. But if you hit all the right notes and just that's all you're worried about, you know, which is kind of equation to anatomy or getting a likeness, it can be interesting, but it can almost be too academic and kind of boring. So, like the inflection with which you play the notes is what moves someone from a novice to
Yeah,
like say, a master, and it creates an emotional impact on the viewer. And I think that's what we need to be cognizant with
yeah,
as artists, you know, when we're painting a portrait. Where do I want to take it? What do I want the viewer to feel? What do I want to say about this person?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you're honoring this life in paint. So, anyways, I could go on and on and on.
No,
I'm just
no, that's it's
passionate
well
about
said.
this.
No, you described it really well, I think. That's awesome. So maybe I get a more basic question. You know, why oil paints then? What is it about oil paints that help you to communicate this message?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think you could do it in any medium, right? I love doing drawing as well. I do want to get into gouache just to take, I think it'd be fun to take on safari or take traveling when I can take my paints. Um, that's totally foreign to me, so I'll pick your brain about that later. But for me, it was just oils were kind of a natural way of like you can play around with it, you can keep changing it. It doesn't dry really fast. So you have time to explore. And I love that process of exploration and even just the process of painting. I even like in my finished work to have a little bit of each process, you know, throughout show in the finished work. I don't like to bring everything up to a finish. I like to have some lead in lines, some abstraction that I think complement the realism. And oils just gives you that freedom to do that. So
Yeah, yeah. I'm always amazed when I watch you paint. There is such a, especially in the beginning, it really is all abstraction. You're blocking in shapes and just the marks and then how they somehow all come together in the eye is always a fantastic journey.
thanks. It was fun to see your reaction when I painted your portrait at Pace when we set up the booth. Because
Yes,
at
I
first, when you
remember
came
that.
over, I think you were like, I don't see myself in that. Then afterwards, you were like, oh, the eyes, I see it.
Yeah, yeah,
Because it
yeah.
was
No,
very
it was
abstract.
fun. It was super fun. And on the fly too. I love that. Um, Well, let's look at some of the paintings you sent. So you sent me a bunch of great images. So I'm going to share those and then we'll kind of talk about those one through one. Some of them are kind of historical images from your portfolio, and then some other are from your recent trip in Africa, which I think folks are really going to enjoy. So let me grab that up here. Everybody should see that come up in just a second. I'm going to put it into the presentation mode. There we go. We'll start. Is that the first one we had? Yep.
Okay. Yeah, this is a recent painting I did. I painted this gentleman. He modeled for my class in Scottsdale, and then I worked from some photos as well and did a photo shoot with him. But it was interesting learning about his tribe. I wish I could pronounce the name, but I know I'm going to mess it up if I try to pronounce the name of his tribe. It's one of, you know, not the main indigenous tribes, but yeah, he was a joy to work with. And I always think if you can paint from life, and then you can do, you know, a more resolved painting later on. But yeah, and
What's
you
the
can see I was
scale of
playing
this
with some of the
painting?
transparent paints. This is called a noble heart. I just as I got to know this model, Chris, over the, you know, the couple days he modeled it for my class, you know, I always like to ask the subject questions about themselves and find out about their culture and you know what moves them as an individual, and then try to imbue the painting with that.
It's wonderful. And are these darks? Is this black or are you mixing some other colors there?
No, no, it's Rembrandt, transparent oxide red, and ultramarine blue.
Ah,
So, I mean, I'm not completely averse to using black out of the tube. I use it sometimes, but often I really like to mix it. And even though you can't really see in a photograph because the camera can't capture that subtlety, you'll see little bits of those colors when you see the painting from life. And it's just nice to see the little, you know, striations of chroma in there.
yeah, yeah.
Always like really exciting to me as an artist. But yeah, so I felt he was a really noble-hearted person, and the name just came to me as I was painting him.
The I love the spontaneity in your brushwork.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so fabulous. I think, let me check. We did have another one. There we go. I knew there was another one that we were kicking off things with.
Oh, yes. So this is a portrait of John Coleman. Included it, although this isn't like a really recent work. It's 2019, and it was in the uh, museum show at the Booth Western Art Museum, and John Coleman was being honored that year. So I did a little painting of him for the auction, and why I included it is, a lot of people ask me about the transparency of paint versus opacity, and this was one of those rare ones where I did limit it to four colors. I had a black and a white, transparent oxide brown, and then gold ochre by Rembrandt. And it's like the gold ochre was really fun to kind of just get the warmth, but it's not overly chromatic. And my goal, because John is Coleman is just an amazing Western artist, very famous Western artist and sculptor and painter, is I wanted the painting to kind of look like an Edward Curtis sepia photograph from the
Hmm.
from the 1800s. And so I was trying to mimic that quality. So.
Well, you captured it immediately. What I thought of those old
Oh,
yeah,
great.
prints. Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
love
very
Edward
nice.
Curtis's work. I always thought it looked like paintings, even though it's photographs.
Working monochromatically for the most part like
Mhm.
this, what are the advantages to it? I mean, how would you or why would you recommend something like this to people working on portraits?
Yeah, I mean, if I had known about it before I was delving into full color as an artist, I think it's a great transition from drawing to full color painting. I did just back in the day, my teacher just threw me into full color painting. And so I didn't really know about, like, say, a Zorn palette or a limited palette. Um, but I think it's can be very advantageous if you want to really solidify your knowledge of values and also explore creating edge work. A lot of people ask me about creating edges because whether you're working from life or photograph, whatever you look at, it brings up the detail. And of course, a photograph just makes everything in detail. And you miss that atmospheric effect that you experience from life when you're looking at a model. And I think edges, if we were talking about music earlier, so I think edges kind of give a hint to like how the music is played. It takes you on kind of a visual journey throughout the painting and also an emotive journey with how you treat the edges. And so it can be a lot for students starting out to do full color and be thinking about edges and values. And
Hmm.
so this is a great way to kind of explore that as a prep for full color.
Yeah, no,
And
it's
it's always
wonderful.
kind of nice to go back to the basics. I like to do some of these. I have one in progress in my studio right now of a mother and daughter from Alaska that are at the basket and with the fur parkas. And I'm doing it in sepia tone, even though I took a full color photograph because I just thought it would look beautiful that way.
Yeah, no, it really does add. I really appreciate your editing too. I mean, I talked about the spontaneity, but there are things that you leave in that I think a lot of other artists would paint out, and it really adds to the not just the depth of the painting, but the interest. Like this little part on his sideburn here, or even just these wisps of black along the rim of the hat that maybe somebody else would have tried to clean up, but you left it into great effect.
Yeah, and it's, one of the things that I'm trying to, one of my intentions is I'm trying to paint the most how I see in real life. And when you see someone and you're inspired, you kind of do focus on the area you're inspired by in the face, and everything else kind of becomes abstract and blurred because, the human eye doesn't see like a camera. It doesn't put everything into focus. It has selective focus. And it's also something that I appreciated in Richard's work before he mentored me, and we were friends for gosh, over 10 years until he passed recently. And he was a wonderful mentor. And he explained that it's like this is how areas look in the periphery when you keep your eye on your focal point. And I feel like
Yeah.
painting isn't just about, again, reproducing likeness, reproducing what's in front of you. John Coleman, in fact, the subject of this painting, when I took his sculpting workshop, he said, remember, we're not copy machines as artists. And that really stuck with me because it's, we want to share our viewpoint and our inspiration, of what
Hmm.
we're garnering from nature, not just reproduce it like a camera would. And I think, those choices we make tell so much about what inspired us visually.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's great. All right, I'm going to skip back over this one and we'll get back on track here. Here we go.
Yeah, so this was a painting that I think this is currently at Gallery 1261 in Colorado. Just for it's not one of my regular galleries, but for a temporary group exhibit. This is a painting of Joan of Arc that I painted in the studio after I did some preliminary reference work and went to France in 2022. This is a recent painting just from last year. It took me a couple of years to get around to working for my reference. But I traveled through France and did a road trip to the town, Dommermay, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, where Joan of Arc grew up, and her house still stands from
Wow.
the 1400s because she was so well known in her time, and they preserved it and the pasture lands behind. And I was also visiting the Museum of Rosa Bonheur, the famous French
Yeah,
artist that did the
yeah.
horse fair at the Met and just an incredible artist. And went there to visit her studio, which had always been a dream of mine. The owners, the mother and daughter that own Chateau Rosa Bonheur, which you can visit and you can even stay at, and you can even rent Rosa's room and stay over, which I did,
Cool.
invited me to paint in her studio, which was just a dream because I respect her art so much. And I had been wanting to paint some paintings of Joan of Arc for a long time, probably over 10 years. It was like one of those, I'm sure like you have those too, Jeff, those paintings in the back of your head that you're like,
Yeah.
I'm going to do this one day. I just needed to find the right model. And I'm painting in Rosa's studio, and one of the girls came in that works there, and they call her Little Rosa. And she came in to see if I wanted some tea or something and check in on me. And I turn around and she's in like being hit by light. And I'm like, there's my Joan of Arc model. And she was, I think, 18, so close to Joan of Arc's age, or maybe a couple of years older. And she's French, and she grew up right near, I mean, Rosa's studio is right near the town where
Mhm.
Jeanne d'Arc lived. And I was like, you can't get more authentic than that. And so I took her outside. We did some photographs. I wasn't able to paint her from life because I was leaving the next day, but I took some photographs and planned to do some more paintings of her.
Hmm. That's fantastic. I love that backstory. Well, here's point. Yeah, that painting of the horses at the Met is one of my all-time favorite paintings.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just and it's so amazing to hear the history of Rosa Bonheur and to see like, they have her studio set up as kind of like in Soroya's studio, if you've ever been, that you just feel like they could walk in at any second because it's still set up the way it was when she was alive.
Yeah. I love that connection to history. I love art history for that reason. It's kind of like you can share a moment with those people.
Yeah, I agree. So this was one that I did recently for a show in New York. This is now at Insight Gallery in Texas. And this is titled A Prayer for His People. It's a painting depicting the chief Sitting Bull. And I kind of deep dived into the story. I had painted, I had gathered reference at the Gathering of Nations powwow that's big here in Albuquerque, and probably took some photo reference, and I took it indoors. I mean, 10 or 15 years ago, and I was wanting to do a portrait, and I actually combined the the photo reference I had of the gentleman with some photo reference I had in New Mexico. And I teach students how to do this online, where you kind of combine things in Photoshop, and as long as the lighting, gels correctly, to create this painting. And when I read up on the story of Sitting Bull, which most of us are familiar with, but I wasn't familiar with some of the nuances that he was unfortunately arrested and killed for doing a spiritual dance that they mistakenly took for a war dance. And so I titled this A Prayer for His People because he's dancing and in prayer, and tried to mimic, and I changed the background a little bit to look more like the Black Hills of South Dakota where he was from. And I just thought, I don't know, it kind of fascinated me how like sometimes culture can be misinterpreted because of ignorance. And that's something that I really believe we have to educate ourselves on as people, and people from, different parts of life and different cultures in different areas of the world to be curious and not be afraid of things that we don't understand, but be curious and learn because this was an amazing human being that unfortunately was treated horribly because, of practicing his religion, which is so sad to me. But a neat side story to this is I was coming back from the show in New York where it first showed for just a couple days, and then it moved to the gallery in Texas. Um, and I was waiting to get on the plane, and there was a man with his mother, and he was speaking Lakota Sioux, and I recognized the language from having watched Dances with Wolves, and um, and so I asked him, are you speaking Sioux? And he said yes, and I was like, that's kind of amazing because I just did this painting and I'd love to. I was trying to make it as historically accurate as possible. And he's like, "Oh, show it to me." And it was really complimentary that he said, "Oh, you nailed it. Everything about it, you nailed historically." And then he asked me the name and I said a prayer for his people. And he spoke the name in the Sioux language. And it was really beautiful. And then we talked some more, and I asked him if I could voice record him. And so, if anyone's interested, if you go on my Instagram to one of the recent pictures of this painting, which was, last year, fall of last year, you can hear the gentleman's voice speaking the name in Sioux, which is was really powerful to me. And I love when those things coincide where you can learn
Yeah, talk about
more about what we
serendipity.
do.
That's magical.
Yeah, it was amazing. So
Right?
this is, and you'll see some later pictures, is painting in Africa, teaching a workshop. Jeremy Lipkin and I were teaching a workshop together in Kenya. This was just last April. And this is a view of the chief of the Maasai tribe that we were painting, and you'll see a painting in a moment. Um, he had a very serious look, he didn't even know how old he was because they don't keep track of birthdays. He's like, sometime somewhere in his 80s, and he had a very stern warrior-like face. He's very kind, but he had a serious face. And then this is him standing behind my chair seeing my painting for the first time. And I'm glad one of my students caught this, and he broke out into a smile and started giggling. And then he came over and shook my hand. It was so touching because I really respect just the history of their tribe, and they've existed how they've chosen to exist for hundreds of years and have their land there and still you know um live their way of life the way they choose to with nature. And it was just such an honor to paint him. And later we painted his wife and we painted one of his sons.
And where's this at again,
So this
exactly?
is in Kenya.
Kenya.
Kenya, Africa. Yeah, in the bush off of the Maasai Reserve. This is um one of his wives that we painted one day.
Beautiful. And this is you painting him, I take it, right?
Yeah, this is the painting I did from life of him. And you can kind of see he has that stern, like warrior face,
He
like we don't
does,
mess
yeah.
with him. I'm sure back in the day he was hunting lions. Now they protect the wildlife and have an agreement with the government to, they can live on their land and not hunt the wild animals to protect their livestock, and the government helps, subsidize them, and they can continue their way of life. And they're just such a gentle, kind, welcoming people. We went one day, I don't have pictures on here, but if anyone goes on my Facebook or Instagram, pictures visiting their village, and they danced for us and the children came out, and it was a dream come true.
No, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and this is me just talking to him, and I mean, we couldn't really talk. He didn't speak English. He had one of his sons there that did speak partial English, but he was just, smiling after he saw the painting, and I think he felt we properly honored him in paint. I don't think he understood exactly what we were doing at first. He was just like, you could tell, really wanting to communicate, and
Yeah.
kept putting his hand on his shoulder and smiling and nodding, and it was very nice.
It's fun the bond you can create with somebody even when there's a language barrier.
Yeah.
Painting must really help, forward that.
Yeah, I think it really does. I mean, I didn't include photos for time in in here, but one of the young boys that we painted is one of his sons that is about 13, 14, kind of right on that cusp of manhood and becoming a Maasai warrior. And he posed with his spear, and then he came over. He was just smiling, like when he saw the painting too. And there's, pictures of that on my social media, and it was just so neat to like. We couldn't talk that much, but we laughed and just,
Yeah.
we could still communicate.
Yeah.
And so it was really special.
It is special. Oh, and here's the painting close up.
Yeah,
Okay.
so this is actually a different painting. The other one in the picture is the one I did from life. This one I did a study for my online class, and the purpose was how can you paint an alla prima portrait from a photograph and make it appear like you painted it from life? And it's knowing certain things to change, certain giving yourself the same time limit, and of course it helps that I already painted him from life.
Yeah. No, that's great. And this is an oil as well.
It's an oil as well. And again, no black in the paintings. It's all the blacks and darks in the skin are mixed.
That's fantastic. I love that combination of ultramarine blue and transparent red oxide, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Because you can veer it warm or cool one way or the other. So yeah, this painting is behind me in the studio. I included the earlier picture you just showed just so people could see the size of it, get a
Hmm.
sense of scale. But I hardly ever do self-portraits, but this one kept coming to my mind. I felt like I needed to paint it. I've always had an affinity to lions, and I love seeing lions in Africa, but I didn't have a doll or a blankie when I was little. I had a little stuffed lion. And uh, and it's also just the spiritual symbolism for me being Christian, and like Aslan the lion. And so this image, I needed to create it, and my parents have laid claim to this painting because they
Ah,
never went. And I was like, that's okay. I knew I needed to paint it. It wasn't
yeah.
like I wasn't thinking about selling it or anything. It was just, every once in a while you get that feeling. You're like, I just need to bring something to it in existence. And it was, for myself, even a reminder of, I pray before I paint, and I, want to always have the right intention,
Hmm.
especially when I'm painting other people, and try to put that into the painting. And so it's just kind of a symbolic of that for me.
Yeah, beautiful. No, and there you are with the real thing.
And just to show that I was gathering reference in person.
Ah, that must be amazing.
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah, in fact, this was my very first trip to Africa. I've been 4 times now, and fifth time will be later this year. So this is in South Africa. The first lion I got to see close up from life, which you can see by my smile. I'm just very happy.
Mile wide, a mile wide.
And someone else one of the students took this picture, and when I posted this for the first time, several people were like, "Oh gosh, those windows are so clear." And I'm like, there are no windows. It's an open air Jeep. There's no roof. There's no windows. There's no doors hardly, just little, to get your feet in.
Yeah.
But it's on a reserve, so these animals aren't hunted. Unfortunately, there can be poachers, and that's an
Right.
ongoing problem in Africa, that they, try to protect the animals. But the animals have gone through several generations of knowing that the people that come in the Jeeps are not going to hunt them. They're not predators. They're not prey. So they don't see us as prey. They look at us with curiosity, and it's just an incredible experience.
That's neat. Super special.
Yeah. And this is a painting I did from also my one of my first trips to Africa. I went up to the Kruger Park area and Thorny Bush Reserve, and the first time seeing lionesses in the wild. And this was just a very special moment to me. We saw there were 4 or 5, I can't remember, sister lionesses, 4 of them, I think, on a rock getting ready to hunt, and they were staring at zebras that were right past us. So it looked like they were staring at us. I have that picture somewhere on social media. It was really intense. And our guide explained to us that, no, they're looking at the zebra. Zebras got a whiff of them, so they dispersed. And these lionesses didn't have dinner for the night, but then they came and they flopped around our Jeep, and it was sunset, and the sky was gilded this beautiful gold. I almost thought about using gold leaf in this painting. I might do another version where I do
Yeah.
that. And for a moment, I had my camera down, just videotaping and taking pictures. And for a moment, I was, of course, distracted by this beautiful copper gold leaf sky. And when I looked back at this lioness that was looking at me, she was looking up at the sky too. And then she looked back at me and we locked eyes. And I was like, wow, she's not in survival mode. She's actually looking at the beauty of the sky the way I was. And it was just this, I felt that connection with human beings. This was like a really pivotal time where I felt it with another species, an animal that it was like taking in beauty like we do as human beings and artists. And it was just a moment I really wanted to capture. It was just very powerful.
Yeah, that's special. But painting a landscape like this, how's that different for you from painting portraits?
Yeah, it takes a lot longer. And especially, one of the things people misconstrue about loose painting or painterly painting, so to speak, leaving some of the brushwork. They think painting tighter is easier, but it's actually to do something that just copies a photo is pretty easy. You're just kind of, copying, so to speak. To interpret, to me, I find takes a lot more skill, a lot more contemplation, a lot more intention, knowing what you want to say because you're complementing what you want the focal point to be, which of course to me is the gaze of the lion, and
Right.
so it's not about rendering every branch or leaf, but this is how I saw the landscape in person when my eyes are focused on this amazing, glorious, but apex predator that is like really like 10 feet away from me. And it's just like, wow, amazing that, I'm seeing things in abstraction. So I'm trying to paint how I took that in. And so, you know, as an artist, even when I'm taking a photo, and I tell students this often, don't just take a photo like we do. Sometimes it's so easy in the digital age, just take a lot of photos and think, well, I'll study them later when I get home in front of my computer. But you really need to study, especially when you know you're going to be doing a painting. As you're taking the reference, kind of pretend you're painting from life, even when you can't, because it's very pivotal to study how things appear in your vision, in your focal point, in your periphery when you know you're going to paint something, because a photo almost gives you too much information and
Yeah.
you won't know really where to edit it unless you are very acutely aware of the experience you had in the moment. So I feel like you really need to, as an artist, make mental notes about, oh, this looks really obscure over here, but this is coming into focus and it leads my eye down to like, the lioness. And when you see people in nature or animals in nature, it's just like nature is so organic and beautifully designed that it just usually, you just have to kind of pick what to emphasize and then subdue the rest. You really don't have to invent anything or bring in, it just like it's all there for you. It's almost too much. So you need to study it to know what to edit,
Sure.
to again go back to your intention and tell the story you want to tell. That's most important to you in your painting.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, that yellow, you really captured fantastic effect there. That is such an intense color. Do you remember the colors you used in that?
Yeah, so that is a cad yellow light. There's also some lead tin yellow in there, cad yellow light, mixed with white, of course. And part of the intensity comes from, because there's only so much you can intensify with pure
Right.
pigment, comes from playing up the color opposites
Hmm.
surrounding it. So if you notice kind of in that dip between the trees, there's violets in there. There's also some violets in the trees,
Yeah.
not just green. And so that violet bounces off the yellow because they're opposites on the color wheel and makes the yellow look more brilliant. And and then in some of the foreground and such, I'm using again a lot of the transparent colors, the gold ochre, transparent oxide yellow, transparent oxide red, transparent oxide brown. I think I even have some transparent oxide orange in this one. And the cool thing with the transparent colors is, you can put them down as a preliminary wash and then build paint on top of them, but you can also glaze with them. And so,
Hmm.
I do have some glazing in this where I've glazed over with a little bit of walnut oil over some dry alla prima paint, pulling in some of that color.
Yeah.
most of it's direct painting, but every once in a while I'll play around with glazing to drop an area down. And that's another way you can use the transparent colors. You can also mix them with opaque colors to tinge it one
Uh,
way or another, which is actually really beautiful too. So
really beautiful. Yeah, I love using the transparent oxides as a addition to a primary color.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. I think that yep, that was it. That was the last one. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those images with us.
Sure, that was so fun to revisit those travels and
What a wonderful, amazing opportunity.
yes, yeah.
It's really an experience, isn't it? Going someplace that's completely different from your own culture. We were talking about going to Africa, and I was sharing my time in Morocco. I felt that way there. When you go to Europe, there's a unique quality, of course, and a language difference, but it's still Western culture.
Yeah.
There's a lot of familiarity. But when you go somewhere that's so different, and it really kind of takes you beyond yourself in a special way.
Yeah, it really does. And I think because there are areas, especially when you go into the bush and you know, that where it's just so devoid of consumerism and people are so happy and it's not focused on, what are you going to buy? It's about like being present. It's about being connecting with people. And I mean, I feel that everywhere, like you said, even in Europe and everything, but there is something about going into an area that is untouched for thousands of years, like
Yeah.
Kruger Park, which is about the size of Israel, is what the game drivers say, to give you a sense size-wise, has been preserved for so long. And then when I went to Kenya, which is outside of South Africa, in its own country, the Masai Mara is just so preserved, and it it's just incredible to see people living as they did hundreds of years ago, except they have iPhones, so, but um, but the land untouched. And in fact, that last painting of the lionesses, I titled that The Garden of Creation because when I was, that was in, Kruger National Park in South Africa, and when on one of the private reserves, but the animals can wander in and, they're just protected. And I just felt, gosh, there's no semblance of modern life. There's no, I mean, the ground, the bushes, the foliage has been here for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it just felt like the most ancient place that you could be, so elemental, and just spoke so much to my spirit. Um, and until then, the most ancient place I'd been to was Jerusalem, which was incredible as well, to see structures and stones that were, over 2,000 years old. But something about the natural land untouched just really spoke to me, and the people that live on it and the animals that exist on it and the gentleness there. It really made me realize that wildness does not mean hostility, and sometimes we get those two concepts confused. But wildness is like, it's like freedom. It's almost like seeing things with the eyes of a child with wonder every day. And I saw this joy in people, and I saw curiosity in the animals, and it's just, I think that's something I just long to paint. And
Yeah.
so I just want to keep going back there to experience that.
Well, that last painting you shared really has that sense of wonder that you're describing in it. I mean, I really felt that. And there is a timeless quality to it as well. And I think when you're in a place like that, you do feel that connection with history in a unique way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Definitely Morocco's on my list, so I'll pick your brain about that when I go. I'd love to hear
Morocco was
more about
beautiful. Yeah. Wonderful country, wonderful people, great culture, wonderful food. And just lovely art and
yeah.
wonderful artists as well. Yeah, I was there for a residency for a month, and
Oh, wow, that's great to
a
stay
great
in that.
experience. There were artists from other parts of the world that were there as well, so there was that level of interaction. Plus, we interacted with a lot of local artists and had it was life adventure for sure.
Wow, that's amazing.
Sure. All right. Upcoming events, activities, workshops. What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so upcoming events, like I said, Portrait Society next week. If anyone's listening and on the fence about going, go, it's just an amazing event. I'll be there, sign up, and come if you see me, say hello, just stop me in the hallway. I also know that there's a virtual version of that, and that's going to be online. And my demo will be in the virtual version. It's on the main stage, so you'll be able to watch that if you're not can't attend in person. Shows I have the show that I'm working on right now are paintings for the Far West show, which is a show that artist Mark Majori and his wife Patricia LaFonhawk put on, and it's going to be at Preacher Gallery in Austin in September. I'll be there for the opening. It's 2-day opening, and I'm working with a beautiful Navajo model that Mark introduced me to work on paintings for that. And it was beautiful to learn about her culture and get to spend time with her and spend a weekend with her, gathering reference. And then I have a couple different shows. I'll be in the Small Works Great Wonders show at the Oklahoma Museum of Western Heritage. I believe that's in November. The annual gallery show at Insight Gallery, which is my regular gallery in Fredericksburg, Texas. And gosh, I have to think. I hope I'm not missing one. Yeah, I don't want to miss any deadlines. I think that's about it. I have a couple commissions I'm working on in my studio and just, busy, busy, but
Perfect.
loving every minute of it.
Well, I posted your website link into the comment section, everybody, for Michelle. So if you can follow there, they can, find out your social media as well as some upcoming events too.
Great.
Perfect. Perfect. So check that out for sure, you guys, and make sure you're following Michelle. She posts some wonderful images, and it's just fun to follow you and see where you're at in the world. And you could be anywhere, which is fantastic. And also your wonderful artwork. I'm still waiting for somebody to put I heart pace or I love pace into the comment section. If you're interested in winning that award, that
Oh, I know. That is
pace,
amazing.
you want
And
to do that. If nobody enters it from the live portion of it, then we'll do a giveaway on Facebook. It may be that everybody who's watching can't go or is already going,
yeah.
but I'll give that a couple more minutes as I go through my spiel. Again, thank you everybody for being here. It's always a thrill, and I love the support. We are going to be back again with another show Wednesday, May 14th, same time, 2:30 Pacific time, 5:30 Eastern time, with an interview and demonstration with another one of our wonderful ambassadors, David Austin. He's a Duluth, Minnesota artist, diverse background, incredible vocabulary with materials. He started his art career out as a ceramic artist and is doing a lot of painting now, but he works with just everything under the sun. And he's just delightful in his explanations. And his studio is one of those, magical wonderlands. So I know everybody will enjoy that. So next Creator Studio Live, May 14th, 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, 5:30 Eastern time. So hopefully you can join us in the same place. And of course, you can rewatch this episode if you came in late, and all of our other episodes from this year here on our YouTube channel. So please tune in, sign, and follow us, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and don't be shy, enter the giveaway because PACE is a great conference as
It's
well,
a great
especially if you like
conference,
to
and
plein air paint.
folks are still holding back. So what I'm going to do, you guys, is I'm going to give this 24 hours. So if you make a comment in the next
Oh,
24
that's a good
hours,
idea.
yeah, on
Some
this,
people are working. It is a
people are
Friday.
working, so this gives you time to watch the show, and then make a comment in the next 24 hours. Say, I love Pace, I heart Pace, Pace loves me, whatever you want to put, just something with the word Pace in it. And then I will reach out to the winner and I will post that as well in
Yeah,
the
just
comment
and I guess
section.
we should say, yeah, one of the things to give a shout out to PACE, which is the Plein Air Convention, is that, I did a demo there a couple years ago and then, went out painting with the groups. And you have so many people out in an area painting together. And, plein air painting, sometimes you have to be careful. It can be dangerous going out on your own. I usually try to go out with friends and such just to, be safe and not just from the normal things, but animals and stuff. But what's neat is you have hundreds of artists painting in areas. So it's very safe. And it's just, it's very unique in and of itself, just like Portrait Society is very unique, geared towards the portrait. And so they're both great conferences. So,
Really, really are. And sorry about that. But we had a knock at the door, and so my alarm system uh,
oh, your new
went
puppy.
into full force there. The puppies, yeah, yeah. Well,
Oh,
thanks
and we
for,
should just a shout out to you guys at Royal Talens too, is that like one of the great things about Portrait Society and the Plein Air Convention is the vendors hall. So as an artist, when you go, you have all the materials from vendors that, you sometimes can't just go into a store and buy something like, Rosemary brushes are here, in the US, or, Rembrandt paints, where you can actually try them out and you can play with them. You can ask people such as yourself, like the qualities, and Kyle about like, how does this paint work versus this paint? And, many of the vendors offer some discounts, and it's like, it's just, I mean, I have plenty of brushes and paint, but I always come home with stuff stuffed in my bag that I can't, turn down, because it's just like I have to buy this, at the vendor's hall. And there's just so many neat things to explore with that. So
yeah, no,
that's
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, the vendor hall is one of the treats, I think, of the show, for sure. And like you said, it's an opportunity to meet the manufacturers,
yes.
test drive the product, get some good deals, talk to some of the people who are behind it all. I mean, sometimes, like with Michael Harding, Michael's there,
Yeah.
and so you can talk to him about the paint. So you get some really great feedback on materials and techniques there, as well as from all of the wonderful instructors who are always there giving just top-notch advice to folks. So don't be afraid to attend. It's not an intimidating environment at all. And it's a great way. You can make leaps and bounds, right?
Yeah.
You can struggle alone and be self-taught in your studio, or you can take a workshop or go to an event like this, and you'll find yourself in a whole other place when you get back to your studio.
Yeah. And I was just talking with, Christine from Portrait Society, the chairwoman there, that, online with some of the people that were going. And I'll say the same thing here for people maybe going to plein air too, or Portrait Society, is that, you might not know anyone when you're thinking about going and think, I'm a little nervous. I'm not going with a friend. I'm going by myself. You might go there stranger, but leave with, like-minded friends and family. It becomes a family, like a group of painters that understands what you're going through as an artist, and your quest for excellence and your challenges you face. And it's just, I, always hear from people who've gone there not knowing anyone, that they leave just knowing so many
Yeah, yeah,
people and
yeah.
being,
You can make some
having wonderful.
lifelong contacts. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, excellent. So I'm looking forward. There's a few people jumping in now, so that's great. So I promised 24 hours, so I'll give folks an opportunity, and then we'll take all those names and put them in the hopper and pick a winner who will get a free general admission pass to the upcoming Plein Air Conference and Expo. So super good price. And thank you again,
Yeah.
Michelle. This is awesome, as always.
Oh, thank you. It was wonderful to talk to you, Jeff. And
You too. You
yeah, for
too.
anyone out there that's an oil painter, try the Transparent Colors by Rembrandt. I absolutely love them. I'll have to try some of your gouache because I want to
Yeah.
play
Yeah.
around with that, and from Royal Talens. And but
Yeah,
yeah, it was wonderful
Wash
to talk
is,
to you.
yeah, it's experiencing a renaissance right now. Lots of painters interested in gouache. A lot of the classes I've been teaching at universities, the instructors are asking to talk about gouache. So it's really fun that there's a renewed interest
It
in
really,
very
yeah,
old
it's really
material.
nice.
Yeah,
I know, talking to other, professional artists, a big renewed interest came when they did the Sargent watercolor show in
yeah,
Boston. And I mean, even those watercolors, I mean, in a way, it's gouache. You could probably explain the difference between gouache and watercolor better than I, but Sargent used opaque, white and different colors in his watercolors to create an opacity in some passages and transparent in others. And I think it just, seeing those in person really, got artists excited about trying that, because he was able to travel easily. You can't always lug all your paints with you. I
yeah.
try to, but sometimes you need a lighter option.
Yeah, it can make a great alternative for oil painters when you're on the road, and it's got a long and wonderful history. I'd love to talk about it and geek out with everybody on it, but yeah, I mean, it dates
I
to
know we'll be here for 3 more hours.
prehistory. The Greeks used a type of gouache. The Persians in the ninth century really established a long tradition in opaque watercolor painting. So it's a fun history to tell. All right, everybody. Thank you again, Michelle. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I'll see you next time on the Creator Studio Live. Everybody, take care.
Thanks, guys. Thank